Hey guys, today I'm going to be rebuilding my combination fuel and vacuum pump that came off my 1958 FC170 with the 226 engine. Now this is a Carter model M957S, but I know a lot of these fuel pumps have the very same process to rebuild them. I got my fuel pump rebuild kit from Then and Now Automotive, so we're going to go ahead and dive into this. Let's get to it. All right, so when I pulled this thing off of my engine, it was completely caked in grease and grime from sitting over the years. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually take a pick to each and every one of these screws and make sure there is no dirt in there, so that way I don't strip any of them when I go to break them loose. So in your main body here, you've got the fuel side. It's going to be on a spring and connected to the shaft, so we'll take that out in a minute. You got your vacuum side. This guy should just pop right out, assuming there's any grease left in there. Yeah, that is just completely deteriorated. All right, now to remove this guy, you can see it's on a spring and not coming out. So this is actually connected to the shaft here, and the shaft is held in by a pin. So we're going to go ahead and hit this pin out. That will come out this side and allow us to pull this shaft out. Now what it actually looks like with this pin, I'll see if I can get the camera to focus. It's on one side, it's pretty flush with the housing, but on this other side, you can see the shoulder on it. Now that shoulder, and actually looking in my parts that I got, is part of this little cap, so we're going to go ahead and remove this guy so that pin should be able to come out. Alright, after you go ahead and get this little cap out, there's one thing you need to look for. We'll see if I can get it in view of the camera. But in that shaft down there, there's actually a little clip. So that clip has to come out in order for the shaft to be able to slide out. Now once we've got that clip out, shaft comes right out that way. And what you want to do is actually push down on this. That'll relieve tension off of the spring and allow you to slide that arm right out. Alright, so now we're going to turn our attention to the fuel pump side of things. You can see there's two little valves here, another one back here, and then two flathead screws that holds this outer piece to this middle piece. So we're going to go ahead and separate those two. Well, something just broke loose, so well, unfortunately my screw ended up snapping, but that allows me to pop this guy off and actually provide heat to where it's screwed into this base here, possibly get some vice grips on there and recover that. I'll have to find a new screw, but that's not a big deal, so we can just keep on moving. So I've actually got enough poking out here that I'm going to go ahead and try some stud pullers before I go crazy with vice grips or anything like that. Alright, as we all know, sometimes things do not go as planned. Now, I ended up getting this screw completely broken flush with the mounting surface here. And once you do that, the only way to get it out is either an extractor or to drill it out completely. Now, I've been trying these extractors, which unfortunately don't work as often as you think they would. and it appears to not be working for me either. So worst case scenario, which seems to happen to me a lot, is you end up having to drill the bolt out. We'll see how this goes. All right, now that mess is cleaned up, you're gonna go ahead, tap out all these little valves. Now these are generally not stuck in super tight, just a couple of taps. They should fall right out. There's two of them, so that's what they look like. You can see there's a little rubber disc, or what should be rubber, little spring, and then the metal housing. Second one, and then the third one goes the opposite direction. Now that's about it for those valves. Now you do actually have one more right here that is in from this direction. After scraping that off, you can see there's a cap right there. So we're going to go ahead and pop this guy out. Now you do want to be a little careful. There's a little screen in mine that was a little difficult to work around, so my punch did put a little tiny hole in it, but I'm not super concerned. This is for the wiper. If I decide to get those working again, or if I decide to switch to an electronic wiper motor, then I can just go ahead and plug this port and that won't be a problem. So just keep that in mind when you're punching out. Again, for me, that was the wiper side of the vacuum port. There's a little screen tucked in there. So just be cautious of that when you're trying to punch out this little cap. There you have it. That is the entire disassembly of the 957 fuel pump. So up next, we're going to go ahead and get all these pieces washed up, so I'm not reassembling them super dirty. And then we'll see what's in the rebuild kit and get this guy put back together. Alright, now that we've got all of our parts nice and clean, we can go ahead and start the reassembly. Now this isn't going to be a show Jeep, so I definitely didn't get into every single nook and cranny, but I tried my best to make sure all of these surfaces in here, all the internal parts, everything, there was no loose bits and pieces, no gunk, nothing like that. All the ceiling surfaces were clean, so we should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and start with this vacuum side now. So what we will go ahead and do, if you remember on this wiper side, there was this little screen. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in, even though I punched a little hole in it. Like I said, I'm not sure if I will be reusing these wipers. So if not, I'll just go ahead and plug that so it doesn't become an issue. But all we had was the screen on that side. And then if you can see, these new included washers are a little bit concave. That way when you hit the center, they'll expand out and seal themselves in this. Just like that. All right, now that we've got that cap in, go ahead and take our little metal valve, put a new spring on there, and a new little rubber gasket. Go ahead and drop that in. Just a couple light taps in there. There's that side. All right, now we'll clean out the hole on this side. This one's going to be a little trickier, but I'm going to go ahead and drop the rubber there in first. Take another one of our little metal springs. And our valve. If you want to make sure you're tapping them in all the way, go ahead and use a brass punch. There you have it. That's the vacuum side of things. So now we'll switch to the fuel. All right, we'll go ahead and take our old cleaned up metal valve, another spring and a rubber. Just give her a gentle tap in there. All right, and then the same thing with these two. And there's that. All right, now something I forgot to show in disassembly. This kit also includes this seal. So we're gonna have to get this guy out so that we can get this new one in. Make sure to get that nice and cleaned up. I was actually able to press it in with my thumb. We can give it just a couple quick taps to make sure it's fully seated. And that's that. All right, so then we're going to switch back to the fuel portion side of this. Now, if you can see in the bottom piece of this housing, there's an arc between the two bolt holes. If you reference your old gasket, you can see that the open portion, or the mouth part of the smiley face, was the same port as the inlet for the fuel. So we can take our new gasket and position it like that. And then to match, we have the arc portion, and the outlet will be opposite of the fuel inlet. So you have the outlet over here, the inlet over here. And we'll get it good hand tight. Same with that one. No need to go too crazy. It's a nice thick rubber gasket. That should seal just fine. And we don't want to repeat the nightmare of having to drill one of those out should we have to take this apart again. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and shift our attention to this main body. Now we have this arm that we're gonna have to get back in onto this diaphragm. If you see on the diaphragm, there is a washer and a little bit of tapered rubber here, and that's going to sit down in this shouldered area here. And as you push this down, that'll expose the shoulder in which this rides on. So that will go just about like that. So you want to make sure that that's pressing in pretty straight. Push that down. Get that installed, and then you can relax for a sec. The next step is going to be lining up this pinhole. Now we have our new pin. Non-directional, both ends are tapered the groove is centered. So I'll go ahead and get this guy in. A couple little taps just to make sure it's down in there. Bottomed out. Then we'll take our new little tiny pin. Get that installed on the shaft there. Prevents it from backing out, not that I think it ever would. And once that is installed, you can take this new aluminum cap and tap that in. So now we have the post, smaller washer, larger plate, flange side down, rubber, smaller plate, flange side up, the provided washer that's larger, then the nut. Now we'll snug that all together. Doesn't need to be too tight. That way that spring has a stronger surface to ride on than just this individual plate. It's a pretty strong spring. So now when you go to assemble it, line your gasket up. Don't forget that spring. Remember which way wiper and the manifold go. And as you press down, pay attention to the gasket, because the gasket is naturally going to want to wrinkle just a little bit as you're pressing that down. Might help to have a second set of hands here, once you got good grip strength. Kind of get one screw started. Flip it around, jump to the other side, and make sure that gasket is not folding over anywhere. Make sure all your screws are able to pass through just fine. Once you get two in, you can go around and inspect it. And there you have it. That is the complete assembly of a M957S Carter fuel and vacuum pump off of a 1958 Jeep FC170 with the WIllys Super Hurricane 226 engine. Go ahead and bolt that up, see how it does.